My name is Epsilon, and welcome to another episode of Useless Cum Laude. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about realism and idealism, within the context of the Age of Enlightenment and the Romantic period. Firstly, the Age of Enlightenment, beginning around 1620, ending in the 1780s. This was a time of realism, of reason and rationality, appreciation for the human mind. There was an emphasis on mathematics and science, new discoveries, as well as man's control over nature. Here, academics flourished, with an emphasis on empiricism, analysis, humanism, orderliness, tradition. It invoked the standards and rules of beauty from the traditions of classical antiquity, which were very formal and restrained. And the Romantic period was a reaction against that. From about 1750 to 1900, was a reaction against the cold-heartedness of the classical period as well as the Industrial Revolution. There was an emphasis on emotion and idealism. Intuition and feelings were important. It began as an artistic, literary, and eventually an intellectual movement, as a reaction to the birth of the industrialized world, where consumerism, secularization, discipline, self-control, etc. were the norm. And for a bit more historical context, this was all happening during the French Revolution from 1789 to 1799, as well as the Napoleonic Wars up to 1815. And this helped set the backdrop for the Romantic period. The overthrow of King Louis XVI led to a new age of freedom. It ended the monarchy, it ended feudalism, and France entered into its first stages as a republic, accelerating the formations of other republics around the world, including the United States, where democracy began to take hold. And with all the uprisings and revolutions, this helped to empower the people. And new questions about morality began to emerge. If we find the answers are wrong, the questions have not yet been answered. For the Romantics, there was an emphasis on authentic experiences in nature. Nature still has value in an industrialized world, respecting the beauty and freedom of nature, as nature must be protected against the plight of industry. Romantics, being very distrustful of society, turned to nature for their mental well-being. As for the individual, everyone has basic rights and freedoms. Since many societies were emerging as an industrialized power, it was easy for individuals to be forgotten. They idealized the tragic hero, the victim of society. This was generally the artist, the poet, the writer, who was noble at heart, but they were misunderstood by society. To them, beauty and wisdom still had value. Freedom of expression and feelings was paramount. No matter what, the imagination should be allowed to flourish. This was their rebellion against the cold-heartedness of modern society. You should always follow your heart, and any negative consequences were the result of a cold, cruel world. And there was sympathy for madness and the suffering of others. For Romantics, the mind should be completely free. There was a goal for romantic originality. Ideas should originate from the artist's mind with as little influence as possible, free from other people's judgments, rules, opinions, substances, etc. A free imagination has no strings, chains, or stilts. The goal was to be entirely original. Spontaneity, naivete, innocence should not be frowned upon. The child was the epitome of the romantic rebel. As a reaction to the blatant capitalism during the Industrial Revolution, money and technology were seen as a bane to humanity and nature. The typical romantic displayed lack of predictability and little concern for capitalism, as modernity had become dark, heartless, and brutal. Romanticism was seen as a way to escape the drudgeries of life, the wage slaves of capitalism. The romantic mindset allowed for one to strive for the infinite, the indefinable. There was an emphasis on idealism. Constant progress toward an ideal, toward a dream, no matter how unattainable that dream might be. With these two periods in history, it gave us a vision of different mindsets. And philosophically, this gave us a spectrum. We have realism and idealism, and each of us falls somewhere in between. The realist seeks facts, analysis. They're practical. They see how the world is. whereas the idealist uses imagination, aspires to higher ideals. Value-based judgment is how the world should be, or could be. If either mindset is taken to the extreme, it can cloud judgment, and both can deter happiness in the long run. Ultimately, both perspectives need to be used well and in moderation, and this will help develop a more mature mind, and hopefully an easier path to wisdom. My name is Epsilon. Thank you for watching, and keep thinking.